Welcome. Today we're diving into the English phrase used to. This simple structure helps us talk about things we did regularly in the past but don't do anymore. It's a great way to show how our habits, routines, or even facts about our lives have changed over time. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to use used to correctly, avoid common mistakes, and sound more natural when talking about your past. Let's start by understanding what used to really means and why it's so useful in everyday English. Used to is a phrase we use in English to talk about actions, habits, or situations that were true in the past but are not true anymore. It helps us show a clear contrast between what our life was like before and how it is now. For example, if you say, I used to play the piano, it means you played the piano regularly in the past but you don't anymore. This structure is very common in everyday conversation and is essential for sharing your life story or changes over time. One of the key reasons we use used to is to highlight how things have changed. When you say, I used to live in the city, you're telling your listener that your current situation is different. This contrast makes your stories more interesting and helps people understand your experiences better. It's a simple way to show growth, change, or even just a shift in your daily routine. Let's look at some examples to see how this works in real life. Used to is perfect for talking about habits or routines you had in the past. Maybe you had a hobby, a job, or a daily activity that you don't do anymore. For example, I used to smoke, but I quit last year. This sentence tells us that smoking was a regular part of your life before, but now it's not. Using used to makes it clear that the habit is finished, and it's a great way to share your personal journey or changes. Let's look at a real example. I used to smoke, but I quit last year. This sentence is clear and direct. It tells us that smoking was a regular activity in the past, but it's not anymore. Notice how the phrase used to helps us focus on the change. You can use this structure for any habit, sports, hobbies, or even foods you liked. It's a flexible tool for talking about your past. Here's another example. She used to play tennis every weekend when she was young. This tells us that playing tennis was a regular part of her life in the past, but not anymore. Using used to makes it easy to share these kinds of stories. Think about your own life. What did you used to do that you don't do now? This structure is perfect for sharing those memories. Used to isn't just for habits, it's also for states or facts that were true in the past. For example, maybe you lived in a different city or your job was different. When you say, I used to live in Mumbai, you're telling people about a past situation that has changed. This helps your listener understand your background and how your life has evolved. See an example, I used to live in Mumbai but now I live in Delhi. This sentence shows a clear change in where you live. It's not just about habits, it's about facts that are no longer true. You can use used to for any situation that has changed, like jobs, relationships, or even your favorite foods. It's a simple way to share your story. Here's a business example. Housingcom used to be an independent company before Aurum bought it. This shows how used to can describe changes in organizations, not just people. It's useful for talking about history, business changes, or even how technology has evolved. Whenever you want to highlight a difference between the past and now, used to is the phrase to use. You want to say something was not true in the past, use the negative form, didn't used to. Notice that we dropped the d in used. For example, I didn't used to like vegetables, but now I love them. This structure helps you talk about things you didn't do or didn't like before, but now you do. It's a great way to show how your preferences or habits have changed over time. Let's look at the example. I didn't used to like vegetables, but now I love them. This sentence is perfect for showing how your tastes or habits have changed. Remember, in the negative form, we always say used to without the d. This small detail is important for speaking and writing correctly in English. To ask about past habits or states, use the question form. Did you used to? Again, notice we dropped the din used. For example, did you used to walk to school when you were a kid? This is a common way to ask about someone's past routines or experiences. It's friendly, natural, and helps you learn more about someone's history. Here's an example. Did you used to walk to school when you were a kid? This question helps you find out about someone's past habits. It's a great way to start conversations and share memories. Remember, always use used to without the ding questions. This small grammar point makes a big difference in sounding natural. So far, we've learned that used to is for positive statements about the past, didn't used to is for negatives, and did you used to is for questions. The key is to remember when to drop the d in negatives and questions. Always use used to. This small detail helps you speak and write English more accurately. A common mistake is adding the d in negatives and questions. Remember, only use used to with the d in positive sentences. For negatives and questions, always write used to. Paying attention to this small spelling rule will help you avoid errors and sound more natural in English. Let's quickly review. For positive statements about the past, use used to. For example, I used to play football. This tells us about a regular activity in the past that you don't do now. It's simple and clear. For negative statements, use didn't used to. For example, I didn't used to eat spicy food. This means you didn't have that habit in the past, but maybe now you do. Remember, no din use. For questions, use did you used to. For example, did you used to travel a lot? This is the correct way to ask about someone's past routines or experiences. Again, remember to drop the d. Now let's talk about a common confusion, used to versus be used to. These phrases look similar but have very different meanings. Used to is for past habits or states that are no longer true. Be used to means you are familiar with or accustomed to something now. Mixing these up can change the meaning of your sentence completely. Let's see the difference. I used to wake up early. This means that waking up early was your habit in the past, but it's not anymore. The focus is on a change from before to now. Now look at this. I am used to waking up early. Here you're saying that waking up early is normal for you now, you're comfortable with it and it's part of your routine. The meaning is completely different from used to. The structure for used to is simple, subject plus used to plus base verb. For example, she used to dance. This pattern is always the same, making it easy to use in conversation or writing. The structure for be used to is subject plus be am is are was were plus used to plus noun or ing verb. For example, I am used to noise, or she is used to working late. This structure shows familiarity, not a past habit. Let's practice. Try making your own sentences with used to. For example, I used to ride my bike to school. Think about something you did regularly in the past but don't do now. This is a great way to remember the structure. Now try the negative form. For example, I didn't used to eat sushi. This means sushi wasn't part of your past habits, but maybe it is now. Practicing negatives helps you use the structure naturally. Let's try a question. Did you used to play an instrument? This is a friendly way to ask about someone's past hobbies or routines. Practice asking and answering these questions to get comfortable with the form. Used to is very common in everyday English. You'll hear it in stories, interviews, and casual chats. For example, we used to go camping every summer. Using this phrase makes your English sound more natural and fluent. When telling stories about your past, used to help set the scene. For example, when I was a child, I used to visit my grandparents every weekend. This gives your listener a clear picture of your past routines. Used to is perfect for describing changes in your life. For example, I used to be shy, but now I'm confident. This structure helps you show growth and development in a simple way. You can use used to talk about other people's past habits or states. For example, my brother used to work in a bank. This is useful for sharing stories about friends, family, or even famous people. Use used to compare your past and present. For example, I used to hate running, but now I enjoy it. This comparison makes your stories more interesting and helps listeners understand your journey. Sometimes used to is used to express regret about things you no longer do. For example, I used to play the guitar, but I stopped. This adds emotion to your stories and helps you connect with your listener. Used to is great for describing routines that were a big part of your life. For example, we used to have family dinners every night. This helps you paint a picture of your past lifestyle. You can use used to talk about places you lived or visited. For example, I used to live near the beach. This is a simple way to share your history and experiences. Used to is useful for talking about jobs you had in the past. For example, I used to work as a waiter. This helps you explain your career path and experiences. You can also use used to talk about relationships. For example, we used to be close friends. This helps you explain how your connections with people have changed over time. Used to is perfect for talking about things you liked or disliked in the past. For example, I used to love cartoons. This helps you share your changing tastes and interests. You can use used to for skills you had in the past. For example, I used to speak French. This is a great way to talk about abilities you once had but may not use anymore. You can also use used to talk about things you owned. For example, I used to have a red bike. This helps you share stories about your past belongings and memories. Used to can describe feelings you had before. For example, I used to be afraid of dogs. This is a simple way to show how your emotions or fears have changed. You can use used to talk about beliefs you had in the past. For example, I used to believe in magic. This helps you share how your ideas or worldview have changed over time. Used to is great for talking about traditions or customs you followed before. For example, we used to celebrate every holiday together. This helps you share your cultural background and family history. You can use used to for any activities you did in the past. For example, I used to swim every morning. This is a flexible structure for sharing all kinds of past experiences. Used to can describe environments or situations you were in before. For example, I used to work in a noisy office. This helps you explain how your surroundings have changed. Now you know how to use used to for past habits, routines, and states. Remember the difference between used to and be used to, and pay attention to the spelling in negatives and questions. With practice, you'll be able to share your past experiences clearly and confidently. Keep practicing and you'll master this useful English structure in no time.